entertainment, business, and local communities, while making positive influences on the lives of others.
Welcome to Producer Profile. I'm Stella Winston.
And I'm Jim Hill.
Our guest today is an author. Her name is Alicia Clark, and she has written her first novel, and it's called Mama Was Down with the Movement. And I've read part of it.
Okay.
And the way she writes is very detailed, and at one point it moved me to tears. But let's welcome Alicia Clark to Producer Profile.
Alicia, I am dying. I mean, I want to hear. So Malcolm X used to say, "Make it plain." Okay. And when you said Mama was down with the movement, I mean, why that title?
Thank you. Why that title? Wow, that's a story in itself. One of my favorite people is Joanne Chesimard. I was reading her autobiography, and I don't really get into details whether or not she is guilty or not. I just think that she is a heroic woman. And while I was reading it, it had something to do with, I believe, her giving birth and having to leave America. And I kind of felt for that child. What would I think if my mother left? Mama was down with the movement, and would that be okay? And just being without my own mother, what kind of feeling that would be, but
you make references in the book about sewing.
Sure.
And how the movement is the movement of the needle as it goes through the material.
Yes.
And I was saying, well, I'm thinking that it has something to do with radicalism and, you know, the civil rights and the Black Power movement. But in your book, you related to sewing. So how did that come about?
Well, that came about because from that, the title, you know, when I thought that thought, I thought, gee, that would be a nice title to a short story. And I just kind of kept it in my mind. The story, the main character, Vanessa Alexander, came from somewhere else. And it's strange, I think, that I began to formulate my own movement. And movement is radical, even if it's quiet. It doesn't have to be loud. Any positive move is a radical one to me. Without movement, nothing exists. These women, they own a seamstress shop, and just their very quiet way of how they relate the world to sewing in that little nest of quiet. And so the title, to me, it stuck and it fit. You know.
When you say movement, you know, and I understand the quiet, I understand the, but are you talking evolution or revolution?
I think I'm talking both.
Both, okay.
Yeah, without life, there's no movement, and just being alive, and life itself is movement.
Right.
For me, if you're not alive, you can't do anything. You're dead. And so.
Now, this is your first novel.
Yes.
What did it take to write your first novel? How did it start?
I would say it was a love. I started out in poetry and screenwriting. The main character came from a screenplay I was working on, and I thought that this would be a short story. And I showed it to a professor. I went to school at Columbia University, and he said, "No, this is bigger." And I said, "Well, I'm not published, not even a poem." He said, "Keep doing it." And I fell in love with the characters and just the growth of it. Every day there was something new. I spent my summers writing. Any free time, I started in my early 20s writing serious. So it just began to be sort of a hobby, and then it began to dominate my life. And it was natural.
What, is it at all autobiographical, or is this?
All fiction.
All fiction.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, my concern right now is because I run into young women, and I run into young women who want to write.
Sure.
Okay. And they talk about they're not writing, you know, and then I see that this is something that you just did, because why didn't you publish earlier? What was the problem? Was there a problem?
There was a lot of problems. I started writing this novel when I was 24.
Okay.
I'll be honest, that was about 10 years ago. And then I dipped and dabbed 4 or 5 years on this now, from about 93 to 98. I sent it out to agents, and I would get the nice no's. You're talented, the 3-paragraph no's. Nothing really harsh. You know, people would pull out certain things. So I knew that there was something there.
Okay.
This is the second printing of this novel, and I ended up self-publishing. And my mom always said, you know, you're gonna have to do it yourself. You're young, people aren't taking you seriously, and I wanted to know, because this is just my love. I'm working on my second novel, and I just didn't see myself. I worked in film extensively as far as production and whatnot, and I just didn't see myself doing anything else. At some point, I'd love to teach literature. That's really something I would like to do, creative writing. It's where I'm comfortable.
Let's get to the book. The main character is Vanessa.
Sure.
Okay, and she's a teenager at the time
Yes.
when the book starts.
Right.
And it goes into what it's like to be a teenage girl growing up in Manhattan, right?
Yeah,
She's in
that's
Manhattan.
right, that's right.
So tell us a little bit about Vanessa and why she developed the way she developed.
Wow. Vanessa, her grandmother, which is odd that this does exist and it's not really brought to the forefront, is that there have always been, I believe, independent black women who own their own businesses and who provided services for fees, and positively.
That's right.
And so her grandmother, being that she migrated from the South to the North, she took what she knew in the South, which was sewing, and she, you know, she made a life for herself. She came here and she did the domestic thing, and her thing was, coming from the South, you know, I can really shelter my girls from this. And it's just a lineage of women. It's the grandmother, and then she has a daughter, and then Jessie has Vanessa.
Right.
And so she really doesn't know, she's been protected. She's around these women all the time. She can go to the shop, and the conflict begins, and the tension begins when the grandmother loses the shop because we're not patronizing our own businesses, and she dies.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Wow. This whole matriarchal image, I mean, does America come into your novel to somewhat struggle with? You know, the whole American concept. You know, you're a woman, let's put you down, you're a woman, you can't get ahead. How do you deal with those challenges?
Myself or in the novel?
Okay.
I show that. It's there because to me all writing is political, so you really have to show the dynamics of life itself. You really have to touch base on those type of issues. And I guess the way they handle their existence, the gentleness that they handle each other and each other's lives and themselves.
Right.
It's sort of how we deal with America as a whole as women.
But you also touch in the book about how violence played a role in the characters' lives.
Sure.
And
yes.
I mean, that's very much a part of the American experience,
Right.
and how it influenced each generation. And
Sure.
Can you talk about that,
Sure.
please?
Wow. Violence, I believe, is a way of coping for so many people. And whether it's, you know, spanking a child to the point where we cross the line out of frustration and stress, how it can be passed down, and when does it become dangerous? And when does it really affect you being an African-American woman living in a society like this?
Right.
And how Jessie, the mother, decides that, you know, I'm so petrified that, you know, there's and throughout the novel there is a thread of there is something going on. And how are we going to resolve this so that it's not repeated? Somewhat close to the generational curse.
Okay.
And it's a quiet dysfunction that needs to be dealt with.
See, if America is as violent as cherry pie, I mean, how do we circumvent that? How do you circumvent that?
I believe that we all have a space inside.
Okay.
And that it really, it starts with dealing with self, and we as adults are responsible. Whether we like it or not, I believe in a sense we're not taught to really look at the truth and to be honest with ourselves, and that it's okay to not be perfect. Because if you don't pay attention to the imperfections,
Right.
you get nowhere near perfection.
So is this book going to help heal us? Is it going to help young women to feel better about themselves with the challenge? It can.
Yes, and black men.
Okay.
Of course, I'm not a man basher.
And we're going to hear, right now, we're going to take a musical break, and we're going to hear from a black man, John Coltrane.
Oh.
And he's going to, we're going to hear him do the piece Alabama.
Okay.
So let's go to the musical break. Welcome back to Producer Profile. We're here talking with Alicia Clark. She's written the book Mama Was Down with the Movement. And she's writing another book, her second one. But quickly, where can the viewing audience find the book?
Nubian Heritage on Fulton in Brooklyn right now. I'm mostly in the independent bookstores. I try to do as many events that I can and book signings. And right now it's really intimate, but for a second printing for a self-published author, I've been pleased. Libraries and Kuru Books. 4W Circle, places like that.
Now, one of the things I noticed about when I was reading her book is that Alicia is able to capture emotion and to put words to different emotions.
Okay.
And there is a particular part in the book that moved me to tears. You know, that I could relate, I could understand what the character was going through. And this is the character Vanessa, and the grandmother has just passed, and she's dealing with her grief.
Yes.
Okay, and you're going to do a reading for us right now.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. I reluctantly pulled my clothes together and dumped them into whatever bags available. And since I never had to move before, the idea of actually doing it drained me. Boxes surrounded my feet and made the packing more confusing. Mama had tried to make it easier by sectioning off parts of rooms for me not to touch, mainly whatever belonged to Mama May, or whatever area she lived in the most. To me, Mama May was everywhere, and I could not accept the reality that she was gone, even though I had found her myself. I would never hear her yell for me to hurry out of the bathroom or to rush me to my feet to get to where she stood. She was in the vase that sat over the mantelpiece, and when I looked in its direction, it never registered. When I turned to look through any doorway, I expected her to come through it. I expected to see her knowing look piercing through every pore of my body because she knew me so well. I waited to smell the aroma of an evening dinner seep through the air to meet my nose, but all I felt was the summer air drifting up my nostrils to fill a stomach reeked with emptiness. A sadness sat quietly, waiting for me to acknowledge the pain that was there, a heaviness of grief. When I looked into the mirror, I stood looking at Mama May, dressing herself in one of her Sunday hats and placing different earrings up against her soft earlobes to see if they matched what she was wearing. I imagined watching her walking out the door humming her favorite hymn. I sat in her rocking chair and tried to imitate the squeak it made when she rocked, and I couldn't get it right. I didn't have the rhythm she possessed. I felt her lap underneath me as I sat still. I had sat there in her lap so many times. I smelled her favorite talcum powder in the air as I made myself take breaths quickly to avoid the sobs that begged to come out. Grief is a sickening feeling when one has to face the reality of loss. I wondered over and over again, who will protect me now? Who will give me the unconditional strange love that Mama May gave me? I began to feel sick just thinking about her. I ran to the bathroom and threw up yellow phlegm that made it harder for me to eat. My stomach jerked with heaves so strong that I landed on my knees because there was nothing coming out, and the heaving wouldn't stop. Next, the sobbing began. Why did you have to leave? I heard over and over in my head, not understanding the confusion I felt, scared by the jerks of my body that ached for her presence. I wanted to run away from the disarray of thoughts. The pain was so intense, that I began to pound my fist into the hard tile, not knowing that it was me I was hurting. My strength buckled beneath me, and there was nothing I could do but hit the floor and try to pound out some of the pain until my knuckles became bloody. The telephone rang, and I let it because I didn't know how to say hello. And I couldn't say anything unless forced because my vocal cords would not let anything manifest through my lips. I began to hold my knees firmly in my stomach to stop the jitter, and something made me listen. I kept hearing her voice trying to reach my soul where I tried to block all feeling out. She was speaking to my heart. Give in to the blow, baby, so you won't break. Don't resist it and it'll go away. The twisted knot in my stomach did all it could to stay in its place. But the more I breathed and listened to the voice, the more it went away. The blurs in my vision began to escape as if a sweeping movement had cleared a path for me to see. The walls expanded, and I was able to see the dust on the dining room table in the sunlight. My body felt lighter than my head, and I felt lifted in the strangest security. The fight was over. The thoughts that raced through my head were accepted with warmth. Peaceful tears filled my hot cheeks as the anger dissipated somewhere else. The heart-stricken grief begged for survival instead of defeat, and fear was scooted over for faith to have its way. Self-pity had no place for survival. Let go, Nessa. The stitch will straighten itself out. Just let the needle keep moving. The voice continued to rub my mind. I got up and dashed my face with water and wished that Mama would hurry up. I thought about the number with the area code I'd never seen and wondered, who in the hell is Norma?
Wow. Let me tell you, I thought you were writing a story about me because my mom passed, and that was all those feelings. Boy.
Yes.
Wow.
And I noticed how you got the movement at the very end.
Yes.
Like you tied in the title, Mama Was Down with the Movement, and you tied in the sewing at the end. In other words, the message that you were that the character Vanessa was hearing was that you got to keep moving.
That's right.
You can't let it stop you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Feel it. Because if you can't feel it and get past it, you'll stay stagnant.
That's right.
So you have a message, okay? And I know you're going to put that message out. But can you put your message in a few statements? What is your message to us?
Keep moving.
That's it.
I write early in the morning, and I pray. And when these things come out, I read a lot. God, to me, writing is so personal. I don't make announcements and tell my friends, "Oh, I'm writing. Don't call me this time." I just sneak and do it.
Yeah, that's like one of the things that I want to know. Like I've heard certain writers, they have to write in a certain way. Like they write in the morning or they write in the evening. They write with no one around, the door closed, door open, on a typewriter, on a computer by hand. Do you have a set pattern? Is there a ritual that you have to follow?
When I first started to write, knew that I really did. I was the type of person to close in and be in total isolation because I was looking for the discipline, and I really just didn't know if it was what I wanted to do. Now, it just comes. It's so natural. That's what I meant by just the natural. I like quiet. I tend to do it early in the morning. I'm working on my second novel, and it was so funny because last week I'm doing a lot of things with this book here, this novel, and I'm doing other things. And so I went to sleep with the line, and I was so tired, and I said, God, I'm exhausted, and I know that this means something. Just please don't let me forget about it. So in a dream about 2 hours later, and it was about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up because I was dreaming something. But that line came back, and so I was up till about 5 or 6 writing.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like, that's the way
so if it hits you, you're right. Or something motivates you, you're right.
Well, I think that for me, I don't believe in writer's block because I tell people, I say, story is always on my mind. As I'm living, I can't stop. I have to pay bills, and I have to freelance and do other things. And so story is always on my mind. And I think that once I'm open to receive, when it comes, it's the discipline to sit down and write it, like you were saying with the young women who say they want to write. You have to be willing, and you have to kind of relinquish control.
Let me ask you something. Can you see yourself in the future writing about men?
Oh, I'm doing that now with Naomi.
Okay.
Now,
yes.
we're going to have to close soon, but you're working on a second book, and that's what the book is about, men?
It's not necessarily about men, but there's going to be a little more focus on men, and one of the characters I will tell on right away is so beautiful. His name is Dewey.
Okay, on that note, what's the name of the second book?
Naomi.
Naomi, and
Yes.
she, the first book
And
is
she's
Mama?
actually from this book.
From
but
this book?
Yes, and I guess she just wanted to tell a little bit more, but it's not a sequel.
Okay, so this, the name of the book is Mama Was Down with the Movement.
Yes.
And Alicia Clark, thank you so much
Thank
for coming.
you so much
Yes,
for having me.
yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Stephanie.
and make sure you go out and
Thank
buy her
you.
book at the different bookstores in the neighborhood. I'm Stella Winston.
And I'm Jim Hill.
Okay. Thank you for watching Producer Profile.